If you've been feeling restless lately, lying awake at night with a mind that won't slow down, or simply moving through your days with a quiet sense of loneliness, you're not alone. Tonight, you're invited to pause, to soften, and to simply be here. Take a moment to adjust your position, whether you're sitting or lying down. Let your body sink into comfort. Gently relax your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and take a deep breath in and out. Again, in and out. Feel yourself arriving fully into this moment. Safe, supported, and ready to receive. Somewhere out there, in the stillness of the night, others are listening too. In Tokyo, in New York, in Sydney, hearts gently opening at the same time as yours. Under different skies, but sharing the same silence. If you feel called, you're warmly invited to leave a comment below. Let us know where you're listening from or how this moment feels for you. Sometimes, a few honest words can create a quiet connection. Welcome to Zen Buddhism, your gentle companion on the path of healing and understanding. Through peaceful stories and timeless teachings, we'll explore the art of being fully alive. And here, just by listening, you are already practicing. This is meditation too, quiet and effortless. And over time, with no pressure at all, you may find yourself slowly healing, changing from within. Tonight, we'll explore the truth about happiness, Zen teachings for lasting joy. Now, let's begin. There are things we carry long after they've left our lives. A message never replied to, a friendship that quietly faded, a version of ourselves we never became. Even on peaceful nights, when the house is still and the sky hangs quiet above us, the weight of what we haven't let go can stir beneath the silence. It lives in the tightness of our chest, in the ache behind our eyes, in the stories we repeat to ourselves before sleep. We hold on without realizing it. Gripping memories and emasika is gripping memories like lifelines, hoping they might bring back something lost. Someone lost. Some moment when we felt whole. But the tighter we hold, the more we hurt. It becomes hard to breathe, hard to rest, hard to open to what is here now. Letting go feels dangerous, like falling, like failure. We think if we release, we will lose. And so we hold on to pain, to blame, to versions of the past that no longer fit. But deep down, we know something needs to soften. Something needs to loosen. Because we are tired. Tired of circling old thoughts. Tired of replaying old scenes. Tired of carrying what no longer belongs. We long to rest, not just our bodies, but our hearts. And maybe, just maybe, that rest begins not with more answers, but with less holding. Letting go is not forgetting. It is not the denial of what mattered. It is not pretending something didn't hurt. Rather, it is choosing not to let the past continue living in the present. It is realizing that healing is not always about fixing what was broken, but sometimes about releasing what no longer serves our peace. When we let go, we do not push away our experience. We simply stop, letting it define every moment that follows. We become lighter, clearer, more spacious inside, because every memory, every attachment takes up room. And when that room is filled with unresolved pain, there is little space left for stillness, for joy, for breath. Letting go invites stillness back in. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you care enough about your well-being to loosen your grip. It means trusting that what is meant to stay will stay without force. And what is meant to leave will leave, no matter how tightly you hold. It is soft, quiet work, often invisible to others, but deeply transformative within. And though it may feel like loss at first, with time, you begin to feel the lightness of release, the ease of being, not trapped in yesterday, not worried about tomorrow, just here with yourself. In peace, picture yourself walking along a narrow mountain path at dusk. The sky is a soft gray blue, and the air smells like pine and rain. You have a small bag slung across your shoulder. It is full, heavy, pulling you back slightly with every step. Inside are stones, each one representing something you've held for far too long. An old resentment, a faded love, a harsh word you never forgave, a version of yourself you couldn't accept. The path winds upward, and your breath becomes shallow. You stop. The wind whispers through the trees. A bird calls somewhere distant. You open the bag and take out one stone. You place it gently on the mossy ground. Then another, and another. You are not discarding them with anger. You are simply returning them to the earth. The bag becomes lighter, your steps softer, and as you walk further, you notice the sound of your footsteps again, the rhythm of your breath, the ease in your shoulders. Eventually, there is no more weight to carry, just you, walking, breathing, arriving in the present moment. The past did not vanish. It simply no longer holds you. And in that quiet space, you are free. Letting go does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it's simply a quiet choice made in the middle of an ordinary day. It's closing a browser tab filled with what-ifs, deleting a message you know you shouldn't reread, Reread again, taking a long, slow breath instead of replying with frustration. Choosing not to bring up that old story one more time at dinner. It's pausing when the mind starts spinning, noticing when the past pulls you in, and gently, kindly coming back to now. It's allowing yourself to feel sadness without clinging to it, to feel anger without feeding it, to feel longing without getting lost in it. Letting go is not an act of indifference. It is a deep act of trust. Trust that the moment you are in is enough. Trust that you are enough without all the old attachments. You may not feel it right away, and that's okay. The practice is in noticing, loosening, breathing, again and again, until one day, without even realizing it, you wake up and find that something heavy has quietly slipped away, and in its place, stillness, softness, peace. Laura sat at the edge of her bed, her fingers curled loosely around a lukewarm cup of chamomile tea. She had no intention of drinking. Outside, the city glowed with its usual late-night rhythm. Taxis passing like yellow ghosts. Windows blinking with life or loneliness. It was hard to tell which was which anymore. The silence in her apartment pressed in like fog, thick and uninvited. And yet she did not turn on the television, did not reach for music. She simply sat, watching her reflection in the blackened glass, a silhouette of someone she once knew. It had been 21 days since the divorce papers were signed. Since she returned to this place she once called home, now stripped of half its furniture, half its warmth, and nearly all its meaning. She had lived the last decade like a performance. Sharp heels and tighter schedules. Meetings that bled into dinners. A husband who smiled for photos, but forgot to look at her afterward. And still, she kept smiling, kept fixing, kept running faster just to feel like she was enough. They used to say she had it all. The job, the figure, the lifestyle, the man. And she used to believe it. Or at least she used to try to believe it. Until it became harder and harder to ignore how empty she felt, crawling into bed beside someone who no longer reached for her. How exhausting it was to keep showing up bright and polished when her heart had long since dulled. She worked in corporate branding, a fast-paced world of pitch decks, metrics, and smiles that didn't reach the eyes. She was good at her job, better than good. She was excellent, respected, envied, even admired by interns who whispered her name like a promise of success. But no one saw how she came home each night, kicked off her heels, and sank to the floor in the dark, unable to cry, too tired to feel anything at all. Hey. For years, she told herself it was just a phase, that marriage was hard, that he was just stressed, that she was too sensitive, too dramatic, too emotional. But deep down, a small voice had started whispering something she wasn't ready to hear. That maybe this wasn't about fixing things. Maybe this was about letting go of what never truly held her. She didn't want to believe it. She clung to rituals, Sunday brunches, anniversary posts, his favorite meals on Thursday nights. But it was all choreography without connection. And eventually, even the motions felt forced. He didn't scream when he left, didn't blame or fight. He simply looked at her one morning over coffee and said, "I don't know who you are anymore." And she didn't argue, didn't defend, because in truth, she didn't know either. She had spent so long trying to be who she was supposed to be: wife, leader, achiever, peacekeeper, that she forgot how to just be. And now, stripped of her roles, her titles, her we, she was left with a silence so loud it rang in her ears at night. Sleep came in fragments, if at all. Each night, she lay on sheets that no longer smelled like him, in a room that no longer held a shared life, replaying every scene in her mind, looking for the moment it all cracked. The word she didn't say, the wound she didn't see. And always, the same whisper came back to her. You were not enough. Not enough softness. Not enough sex. Not enough space. Not enough silence. Or maybe too much of all of them. She didn't know anymore. And worse, she didn't even know what she wanted to be anymore. The days blurred. Emails unanswered. Groceries left to wilt in the fridge. Makeup untouched. Hair unwashed. As if her body had finally collapsed under the pressure of keeping it all together for too long. Friends texted. A few even called. But she didn't reply. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't know how to answer the simplest question anymore. How are you? She wasn't okay. But she wasn't exactly broken either. It was something murkier, heavier, like grief for a version of herself that died quietly and unceremoniously in the middle of her perfect life. The woman in the mirror still looked like Laura, slim, elegant, composed, but her eyes gave her away, hollow and searching, like she had misplaced something essential and no longer knew where to look. She remembered one night, standing in the bathroom, brushing her teeth with mechanical precision, and suddenly she felt like a ghost watching someone else's routine. The disconnect was so sharp she dropped the toothbrush. Water still running, mouth half foamed, and sat down on the cold tile floor, breathing shallow, heart pounding, trying to remember when she last felt truly alive. She couldn't. Maybe at that weekend retreat 5 years ago. Maybe during a rainstorm in Italy. Maybe before she started measuring her worth in calendar slots and how much affection she could earn with efficiency. She used to write poetry. She remembered that vaguely in college, before everything needed to be monetized or optimized or proven. Now she could barely finish a sentence without thinking of how it sounded to others, even in her own head. And still, the world went on. The lights outside flickered. The inbox filled. The world expected her to bounce back, to glow up, to heal gracefully. But she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. She just wanted to sit with the ache a little longer, to let the pain tell her something she hadn't been willing to hear. She didn't want a fresh start or a makeover or a self-help plan. She wanted silence, truth, something real beneath all the roles and performances. And in that still, lonely apartment, somewhere between insomnia and memory, she began to realize that maybe this emptiness wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of finally meeting herself. The trail had been quiet for hours. Only the crunch of Laura's boots against the dirt and the occasional sigh of wind through pine needles kept her company. Her backpack pressed heavily against her spine, but the weight inside her chest felt denser still. She had come to Colorado chasing silence, hoping the vastness would drown out the noise inside her. Each step away from the city, from the apartment, from her old life, had not felt like freedom, but like walking deeper into the ache. The trees whispered above her, tall and indifferent, and the air grew cooler as the path dipped toward the sound of water. Eventually, she followed it, not by plan, just instinct. Her feet drawn toward something gentle, and as the trail curved, she saw it. A narrow stream, silver under the afternoon light, winding calmly through rocks and moss. She stood still for a moment, letting the sound of moving water soften her breath. And then she noticed the woman, sitting there at the edge of the stream like she had always belonged to it. Her back curved slightly, hands resting in her lap, a scarf loosely tied around white hair, eyes not closed, but not quite focused either. As if she was listening to something beneath the sound. Laura paused, unsure whether to turn away or speak. But something in the woman's stillness held her there, not with force, but with a quiet gravity. The older woman turned slowly and smiled. Not in the way people smile to be polite, but like she had all the time in the world to mean it. Laura nodded back, hesitated, then stepped closer. "Beautiful day," she said quietly. The woman looked at the water, then back at Laura. "Every day is beautiful when you're not trying to change it," she replied. Laura sat, leaving a respectful distance between them, and for a while neither said anything. The stream moved between them like a breath neither of them needed to own. Laura watched it swirl gently around a smooth stone, its surface catching small glints of sun. I thought coming here would help me feel something, she admitted, her voice softer than usual. I don't know what exactly. The woman nodded, eyes following the water. Sometimes we don't need more feeling. We need less holding, she said. Laura looked at her, unsure what to make of the words, but not wanting to push them away. I used to have everything, she whispered after a long pause. A career, a marriage, a life people envied. And now it all feels so far behind me, like it belonged to someone else. The woman gently picked up a dry leaf that had landed near her knee, turning it slowly between her fingers. And how did it feel, having everything? She asked. Laura thought for a moment, staring at the stream. Heavy, she said, almost surprised by her own answer. The woman smiled, opened her palm, and let the leaf fall into the water. They both watched as it floated briefly, spun once, then drifted slowly downstream. It knew it was time to go, the woman said, her voice barely louder than the breeze. Laura felt something stir in her chest. Not a thought exactly, more like a loosening. Her eyes followed the leaf until it disappeared behind a bend. How do you know when to let go? She asked. The woman looked at her with kindness that felt ancient. When the holding becomes heavier than the loss, she replied. You are already enough. You know. Laura's eyes filled with quiet warmth. Not tears, but the kind of softness that comes after too long being hard. She didn't respond. Didn't need to. The stream said everything. It moved without resistance, without memory, carrying away leaf after leaf, and yet still remaining whole. She watched it, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she needed to fix anything. Not the past, not herself, not even this moment. The leaf touched the water so gently it was almost reverent. A silent farewell that stirred something inside Laura more than any word ever had. It didn't sink, didn't resist, just floated, turned slowly, and moved with the current. No urgency, no fear, only trust. She watched it drift downstream, its shape growing smaller, softer, until it was no longer visible. Yet its movement echoed inside her, as if a mirror had been placed before her chest, and she was seeing her own reflection for the first time. Not her face, but the quiet truth beneath it. How long had she held on to things that were already gone? The marriage she kept nurturing even after the laughter had left. The version of herself that smiled when she was breaking. The fear of being alone that made her stay. Bend. Strive. Perform. And now, she was watching a dead leaf show her how to let go. The woman beside her didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. The water was speaking in its own language. And for once, Laura was listening, truly listening, without judgment, without planning a response, without trying to hold the moment in place. She could feel it then, the loosening, like a knot inside her chest, slowly unwinding, like a tight fist opening in the dark. And with it came a softness she hadn't felt in years. Not joy. Not yet. But a space where joy might one day return. She took a breath, deeper than the ones before, and noticed how it moved through her like wind through open windows, no longer crashing against locked doors. She thought of how long she had confused effort with worth, holding on with love, control with safety. And now here was a stream, a stranger, a leaf, all reminding her that some things are meant to leave. Some identities, some stories, some dreams. And their departure does not mean she has failed, only that they are no longer alive. You only lose what you cling to. She remembered reading once, and now the words returned not as a concept, but as a knowing. She had been clinging to a version of herself that was no longer true. The perfect woman who balanced career and home, who never asked for help, who stayed even when her heart quietly left. But she was tired. And in that tiredness, she finally saw the beauty of surrender. Not giving up, not collapse, but the holy art of release, letting the stream carry what no longer needed to be held. Her hands were still by her side, but inside, something had already opened. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just sat there breathing. And with each breath, she felt a little less like she was breaking, a little more like she was returning to something older than expectation, older than image, something soft and unafraid. The stream continued flowing, unbothered by what it carried or left behind. And Laura sat with it, not trying to understand everything, just allowing herself to be part of something that didn't need fixing. For the first time, she felt like she could stop swimming upstream and simply float. Now close your eyes, take a slow breath in, and gently let it go. Imagine yourself sitting beside a quiet stream. The light is soft, the air cool against your skin, and the only sound is the gentle movement of water passing over smooth stones. You feel safe here, unhurried, unseen, just being. Nothing to fix, nothing to prove. In your hand, you're holding a single leaf. It's dry, delicate, its edges curled slightly with time. This leaf is something you've carried for a long while. Maybe it holds an old story, an image, a weight you no longer need. Look at it now in your palm. Feel its texture, its lightness, how still it rests in your hand. The stream before you moves slowly, gracefully, without struggle, without resistance, just water being water. And you begin to notice your breath again, soft and quiet, rising and falling like the rhythm of the earth itself. Now, when you feel ready, let your fingers loosen. Let the leaf slip gently from your hand. Watch as it touches the surface, floating for a moment, then spinning once, peacefully, then drifting. Not fast, not lost, just moving with the current, carried with care. You watch it without trying to hold it back, without reaching for it again. And as you do, notice you're still here, whole, untouched. The stream did not take anything from you. It simply received what you no longer needed to keep. Breathe again. Slow, easy. Feel your shoulders soften, your jaw relax, your chest open just a little more with every breath. Nothing is missing. You are not emptier for letting go. You are clearer, lighter, quieter inside. Let the sound of the stream continue to hold you. Let the movement of the leaf remind you that release is not an end, but a return. Stay here a while, with your breath, with this peace, with this knowing that you are safe to let go and still remain whole. Laura returned to the city not as the woman who had left, but as someone who had quietly laid something down along the way. She stepped back into her apartment, into her office, into conversations and routines, but this time with less armor, less urgency. The silence that once haunted her now felt like a companion, a quiet space she no longer needed to fill with proving or performing. She no longer checked every mirror for signs of perfection, no longer stayed late to be twice as competent, twice as composed. She still cared, still worked, still loved, but without the weight of needing to be everything. She let her hair fall naturally. She said no without apology. She smiled without overthinking what it meant. There were moments, of course, when the old voices returned, whispering that she should try harder, be more, hold tighter. But now she met them with stillness, a breath, and the soft remembering of a leaf spinning on water. She had begun to understand that the things meant for her would stay without force, and those that drifted were not lost, only returning to where they belonged. In her heart, there was no longer the frantic pacing of what now, but the slow, steady rhythm of this is enough. Not because everything was perfect, but because she no longer believed she had to be. She no longer chased love by becoming smaller or softer or quieter than her truth. Instead, she stood in her own presence, not needing to be admired to feel worthy. The world around her hadn't changed much, but her way of being in it had. She could walk through a crowded day and still carry a quiet center inside her, a stream she could return to at any moment. She had made peace with the truth that some things would leave. Some people would walk away, and some dreams would shift into something else. And none of that meant she was less. She had stopped trying to become someone else to be chosen and started allowing herself to simply be. And in that space, something beautiful took root, not control, not certainty, but ease, like finally exhaling after holding her breath for years. So as she stood now at the edge of a new chapter, looking out the same window that once reflected only grief, she whispered, "Not a resolution, not a goal, just a soft question meant for anyone listening. Perhaps even for you. Can you let go of who you thought you had to be?" Miguel stood alone in the kitchen long after the last guest had left, the hum of the industrial lights above sounding like a distant echo in his ears. His hands still moved with a practiced fluidity as he wiped down the counter, organizing ingredients for the next day's service. But even the familiar rhythm of cleaning the workspace felt wrong. It was all mechanical now, a ritual that had once been satisfying, but now only reminded him of the emptiness he felt inside. Once, this kitchen had been his kingdom, a place where he could craft and create, where each dish he plated was a reflection of his passion. But now, it was a prison, a place where he felt trapped, chained to the very thing that had once brought him joy. He was 42 years old, once a celebrated chef in New York's finest restaurants, his name synonymous with culinary excellence, his dishes praised by critics, his plates described as masterpieces. He had won awards, made television appearances, and had his work featured in food magazines. At the height of his success, Miguel had felt unstoppable. But now, standing in the cold, sterile light of his kitchen, all he felt was exhaustion. There was no more excitement in creating a new dish, no more thrill in perfecting a recipe. The pressure to constantly innovate, to impress, to outdo himself had eaten away at the passion he once had for cooking. Now, it was all about meeting the high expectations of the customers, the critics, and his own relentless drive to be the best. But no matter how many accolades he received, it didn't fill the emptiness that had taken root inside him. His life had become a blur of long hours, endless preparation, and the constant pursuit of perfection. The demands of his restaurant had consumed him. He spent his days focused on the next menu, the next trend, the next Michelin star, and his nights in the kitchen, cooking dishes he didn't even care about anymore. There was no time for himself, no time for his family, no time for rest. He had given up everything for the sake of his career. He had sacrificed relationships, his health, and, and his happiness in the pursuit of culinary greatness. He had lost touch with who he was. It wasn't just the constant pressure that wore him down. It was the constant need to prove himself. He had been told for years that he was one of the best. But now he questioned whether that was even true. The compliments felt hollow, like something he had earned through effort, not passion. The praise, the awards, the recognition, it all felt empty now. The more he achieved, the more he felt the weight of expectations pressing on him. The joy of cooking, the love he once felt for the art of food, had slowly faded away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of obligation. And the harder he worked, the more his love for cooking slipped further out of reach. The kitchen, once a place where he could lose himself in the creative process, had become a battleground. Every dish was a challenge, every order a test. He could hear the voices of his critics in the back of his mind, the demands of his staff, and the customers pressing him to create something new, something better. He had tried to escape these thoughts, but they followed him wherever he went. The kitchen was no longer a sanctuary, but a constant reminder of his inability to find peace. The dishes were no longer a reflection of his artistry, but a measure of his success, a validation of his worth. And yet, no matter how much he created, it never felt like enough. Miguel didn't know when it had happened, but somewhere along the way, the passion had burned out. The spark that once ignited his creativity had slowly been extinguished, replaced by a deep, gnawing sense of dissatisfaction. The joy he once found in experimenting with flavors, in the joy of seeing a dish come to life, had been replaced with the fear of failure, the need to impress, the constant pressure to outdo himself. The kitchen had become a place where he measured success not by the joy he felt in cooking, but by the accolades he received, by the praise and recognition from others. But even those had lost their shine. What once felt like an accomplishment now felt like an empty pursuit, a never-ending cycle of striving for something that always seemed just out of reach. The more he tried to push himself, the further away happiness seemed to get. He had once loved food with a passion that was unmatched. But now it felt like a burden. He had become someone he didn't recognize, a man consumed by his work, consumed by the idea of success, consumed by the fear of not being enough. The kitchen, once a place of freedom, had become a cage, and Miguel no longer knew how to escape. As he wiped down the counter for the last time that night, He couldn't help but wonder how it had come to this. How had he gotten so lost in the pursuit of perfection that he had forgotten what it was like to simply enjoy cooking? How had he let the joy slip away, replaced by this constant pressure to perform? He had spent years building a career, but what had he truly built? A legacy of accolades. Yeah, but at what cost? In the pursuit of greatness, he had sacrificed everything that had once mattered to him. And now, in the stillness of the kitchen, Miguel realized that he didn't even know if he wanted to continue anymore. He had lost his love for cooking, and with it, he had lost himself. The question lingered in the air, unanswered and heavy. As he turned off the lights and left the kitchen behind, stepping into the night where he hoped he might find the clarity he so desperately needed. The plane touched down with a slight jolt, as if even the earth itself wasn't quite ready for his return. Miguel hadn't been back to Mexico in over a decade. He had always said he was too busy, too booked, too needed in New York. But really, he had been too afraid. Afraid of what he might feel here, of what he might remember. The sun was already dipping behind the dusty hills by the time he reached the village. There were no Michelin stars here, no reservations or critics, just warm dust, red soil, and the scent of wood smoke floating lazily from the houses like soft sighs. His grandmother's home sat exactly where it always had, unchanged by time, guarded by two orange trees that leaned slightly in the wind, like old men whispering secrets. She opened the door slowly, squinting up at him with eyes that hadn't forgotten. She whispered, and then her arms were around him, thin and fragile, but still the safest place he had ever known. That night, she cooked for him. No sous chefs, no flame torches, just her, in that little adobe kitchen, barefoot on the cool clay floor, humming under her breath as she stirred a pot of beans. Miguel sat at the table, silent, watching the dance of her hands, how she measured nothing. Yet everything came out just right. He could hear the faint rustle of leaves outside, the whistle of a kettle, the occasional bark of a dog. On the stove, the beans simmered with onion and episode, filling the room with a smell that brought him back so suddenly it almost hurt. Back to afternoons spent playing with cousins, running through cornfields, sneaking bites of tortillas from her counter. No truffle foam, no deconstructed anything. Just beans, rice, handmade tortillas, and a fried egg. When she placed the plate in front of him, he didn't say a word. He just ate. Slowly, reverently, and somewhere between the second and third bite, something inside him began to soften. The food wasn't just food, it was memory, care, time, love. It asked nothing of him, didn't need to impress. It was enough. He looked around the kitchen. The walls were stained with decades of steam and laughter. The ceiling fan creaked as it spun. A single wooden spoon sat by the sink, worn smooth from years of use. There was no polished stainless steel, no molecular gastronomy, just warmth. And suddenly he realized he hadn't felt warmth in a kitchen in years. He had spent so long chasing elevation, complexity, applause. Every dish in New York had been a performance. Every plate a battlefield of precision and anxiety. Here, a meal was an embrace. He felt his shoulders drop for the first time in months. His grandmother poured him a cup of cinnamon tea and sat down beside him, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes soft. They didn't speak for a while. Words weren't necessary. He thought of his restaurants, the relentless tasting menus, the stress of staying relevant in a city that never slept. He thought of the kitchen lights that buzzed too loudly, of the burnt-out line cooks, of the critics who dissected his creations like vultures. And then he looked down at his plate, at the food that had no name, no flair, no fusion, just beans and love. She looked at him with a small smile and said, "The simple life is a rich life." The words fell gently into the quiet room like petals, and something in him cracked open just a little. That night, he lay in a room with no traffic outside, no emails, no phone calls, only the hum of crickets and the slow, steady breath of the countryside. He closed his eyes and saw not the gleaming silver of New York kitchens, but the orange-tiled stove in his grandmother's house, the way the beans bubbled like they were alive. He had returned for a break, maybe even to hide, but now, somewhere deep in his chest, a different hunger had awakened, not for stars or headlines, but for something much older, quieter, something he had almost forgotten. The spoon trembled slightly in his hand as he lifted it, the steam rising in soft swirls like breath meeting the morning air. Miguel sat at the edge of a wooden bench, alone, in the modest kitchen of his grandmother's old countryside home, a place he hadn't returned to in years. The bowl before him was humble, almost too simple. Warm white rice, gently salted, topped with soft red beans stewed in garlic and a touch of cumin. No foam, no tweezers, no reduction or flambe, just food. Food the way it used to be. Food the way it was. Before stars and critics and long hours under fluorescent lights. He took a bite. The warmth spread from his tongue to his chest. The salt hit the memory of childhood. The beans were imperfect, some a little too soft, some still with a bit of bite, but they tasted of safety, of love, of something that didn't need to prove anything. And then, without warning, his throat tightened. He set the spoon down and covered his mouth, not out of etiquette, but because something had cracked open inside him. Hot tears fell one, then another, and soon they came freely, silently, as if he had been waiting years for permission to cry, but never knew what it would take to unlock it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, holding the bowl close as if afraid it might disappear. What was this ache? This grief? This quiet undoing? It wasn't about the beans. Not really. It was about the years he had spent chasing applause instead of nourishment, perfection instead of presence. It was about the 20-course tasting menus where he forgot the taste of salt, about the beautiful plates that cost someone a night of sleep or a hidden burn on the forearm. It was about the loneliness behind success, the bitterness behind flavor. He had spent so long trying to impress the world that he forgot how to feed himself. And in that moment, with nothing but rice and beans, he remembered. He remembered watching his grandmother stir a pot with one hand while holding his small fingers in the other. He remembered his father coming home late, exhausted, but still smiling at the same meal now sitting before him. He remembered what it felt like to eat slowly, gratefully, and without a single thought of critics or cameras. His breath slowed. His shoulders softened. The house creaked softly around him. Like it, too, had been holding its breath for years. The world, in all its chaos and noise, fell away. And only this remained: warmth, taste, memory, and presence. He had always believed that happiness was somewhere ahead of him, at the next achievement, in the next invention, in the next award. But here it was in a chipped ceramic bowl, on a quiet afternoon, in the middle of nowhere, as he took another bite, this time without resistance. A thought rose gently, not loud, not forced, just true. When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. He looked around the kitchen. It was old. The paint on the cabinets had peeled. The faucet dripped. The linoleum was stained with years of living. But everything he needed was here. Everything is real. He didn't need applause tonight. He didn't need foie gras or truffle foam. He needed to feel this: the silence, the letting go, the return. The ego that had carried him for so long, the one that whispered he must always do more, be more, win more, began to dissolve, like salt in warm broth. Not gone, not erased, but softened. It didn't hold him the way it used to. He let himself stay there for a long while, chewing slowly, crying without shame, feeling the weight of every expectation slide gently from his shoulders. This was not defeat. It was remembering, and it tasted like peace. Now close your eyes. Feel the quiet returning to your body, like the hush of early morning before the city wakes. Imagine you are sitting in a small room, the light soft, the air still. In front of you is a bowl of warm white rice. Beside it, a cup of cool, clear water. Your hands rest gently in your lap. You breathe in, slowly, and breathe out, gently, again and again, letting the breath become slower, softer, like the waves of the ocean, coming and going, without effort. Now lift the bowl in your hands. Feel its warmth. Notice its weight. This is enough. Right here, this simple moment, breathe in and let yourself arrive fully in the stillness. Then pick up a small spoonful of rice. Bring it to your lips. Place it on your tongue and chew slowly. Slowly. Feel each grain, each soft texture pressing gently into your awareness. Warm, grounding, whole, no flavors screaming for attention, only simplicity and peace. Breathe in and taste the earth, the rain, the hands that planted, harvested, carried this rice into your life. As you chew, feel the journey of this grain, how far it came to be here, and how quiet it is, resting now in your care. This, too, is nourishment, not only for the body, but for the soul. You don't need to prove anything to receive it. You don't need to be impressive to be worthy of it. You are here, and that is enough. Take a sip of the cool water. Hold it gently in your mouth. Let it touch every corner before it slips down your throat. Imagine this water coming from a deep mountain stream. Fresh, ancient, unhurried. As you swallow, feel its purity moving through you, washing away the noise, the pressure, the constant need to be more, do more, create more, and in its place, silence. Now, breathe in deeply. Feel the space you are in. Quiet, safe, whole. Let your shoulders drop. Your hands relax. Your jaw softens. You are no longer carrying the kitchen with you. No more knives. No more critics. No more fire. Only this moment. A bowl of rice. A cup of water. And you. Breathing. Just breathing. With each breath, release one expectation. With each breath, let go of one old pressure. One story about who you had to be. And in the space that remains, notice what rises. Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's sadness. Maybe it's nothing at all. And that, too, is welcome. You are not here to impress anyone. You are not here to dazzle or perform. You are here to eat this meal, to feel its warmth, to feel your own heartbeat, steady, kind, present, to remember that joy can be quiet, that healing can be small, that love can live in a single spoon of rice. Stay here a little longer, breathing, tasting, being knowing that nothing more is needed. This is your sacred moment, and it belongs only to you. Miguel no longer worked in the loud, fiery kitchens of high-end restaurants, no longer woke each morning chasing the next award, the next review, the next nod of approval from someone who had never shared a meal with him, who didn't know the weight he carried in his chest with every perfectly plated dish. That life had faded quietly, like the steam rising from a pot left to cool on an empty stove. He had walked away, not in anger, but in silence. One evening, when the noise became too much, and he realized he hadn't tasted his own cooking in years. Not really, not with presence, not with heart. Now, he rose early, before the sun, and opened the shutters of his small corner eatery just as the sky turned a soft pink. The place had no sign, just his name on the door, painted in humble letters. He didn't advertise, didn't post online, didn't care to be followed or discovered or applauded. His joy came quietly now, in the way the rice cooker clicked to life, in the way the knife moved through garlic with ease, in the way the scent of simmering broth reminded him of afternoons in his grandmother's kitchen when he was still a boy, still dreaming, still whole. Oh, he made simple meals, a bowl of rice with pickled vegetables, a warm stew with torn herbs, grilled fish wrapped in banana leaf. Nothing showy, nothing grand. And people came. Quietly at first. Construction workers on their lunch break. Tired teachers. Old couples who spoke in whispers. Students who missed home. They came not for spectacle, but for something that felt like memory, like healing, like truth. And Miguel stood behind the counter. Apron faded, hand steady, and served them with a heart no longer tangled in ambition. Just rice, water, a little salt, a little love. Some customers tried to take photos, asked for the name of the place, for an Instagram handle, for something to share. But he always smiled, kind and firm, and said, "Just eat. Just be here." And most of them understood, because something in the food, or in the quiet way he handed it to them, made them pause, made them remember their own grandmother, or a dish from childhood, or a moment long buried beneath years of hurry and hunger for more. Miguel didn't miss the old life, the late nights, the panic, the pressure. He didn't miss the judges or the endless tension in his shoulders, or the way his reflection used to look like a stranger. He had lost something back then, a sweetness, a slowness. And now, every time he stirred the pot, every time he pressed his palms together in quiet gratitude before eating, he felt that sweetness returning, filling him in places success had never touched. One night, after closing, he sat alone on the small wooden bench outside his shop. The street was quiet, the sky full of stars. He held a bowl of rice in his hands, still warm, still fragrant, and he ate it slowly, each bite a prayer, each grain a reminder that happiness doesn't live in the complicated, in the extravagant, in the curated life built for others to admire. Happiness lives in moments like this, barefoot on cool stone, with nothing left to prove, and everything finally enough. So now he lives this way, each day a quiet ritual, each meal an offering. And his heart, once so heavy, is light again, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is present, because he no longer looks for joy and applause, but in the soft steam rising from a bowl of soup made with care, with memory, with real time. And maybe, just maybe, you can feel that too. Maybe there's a simple thing you've rushed past, a bite you've swallowed too quickly, a moment you've overlooked because it wasn't shiny enough. Can you find joy in the simple things you once overlooked? Can you slow down enough to taste your own life? Can you let go of being impressive? Just long enough to be here, truly here, where joy waits, quietly, in the steam, in the silence, in the soft knowing that this is enough. Life today often feels like a maze we can't quite exit. Notifications pinging from every device, endless choices from morning to night, schedules layered with things we must do, should do, forgot to do. Our minds are constantly processing, comparing, calculating, chasing. We wake up tired and somehow fall asleep even more tired. Beneath all the motion, there's a quiet exhaustion, a sense that we're tangled in too many threads, too many opinions, too many goals, too many things that promise happiness but leave us more restless than before. We measure ourselves against impossible standards. We multitask through meals. We plan the next thing while doing the current one. Even moments of rest come with guilt, as if doing less makes us less. Simplicity seems like a luxury we can't afford. or a concept too abstract to truly live by. But deep down, something in us knows the more we have, the less we feel. And the more we try to do, the less we truly are. We long for a slower rhythm, for quieter hours, for the feeling of being enough with just what is. Yet the world keeps spinning fast, and we're afraid to step off, afraid we'll fall behind, afraid we'll miss something, afraid of the silence itself. But perhaps that silence is where peace has been waiting, patiently, all along. Simplicity is not the absence of beauty or meaning. It is the art of returning to what matters most. When we choose a simpler way of living, we are not giving up joy. We are clearing space for it, because joy does not thrive in clutter, not just the kind we see, but the kind we carry. Too many obligations, too many roles, too many expectations leave little room for presence. When our lives are full of noise, it becomes hard to hear the soft voice of contentment. But when we pause, when we remove what is not essential, we begin to feel what is, and what is often enough. Simplicity is the foundation of peace because it removes the distractions that confuse our hearts. We stop chasing what we don't need and start noticing what's already here. The warmth of a morning light through the curtain, the comfort of clean sheets, the smile of someone we love. These are small things, but in a simple life, they shine like treasures. Simplicity invites us to breathe more slowly, to make space for grace, to let go of the pressure to be everywhere, do everything, have it all. And in doing so, we rediscover a softer way of living, one where we are not running, but resting, not proving, but being. And in that being, we are enough. Imagine a small room, empty except for a cushion on the floor, a window cracked open to the breeze, a single candle flickering against the wall. There are no shelves, no noise, no clutter, just space, clean, open, silent. You sit on the cushion and feel how little is needed for this moment. Your breath rises and falls. A bird calls in the distance. The light dances gently on the wooden floor. The world has not ended, though you have stopped moving. The simplicity of this space allows you to feel yourself again. Or imagine a clear mountain stream, shallow and slow, flowing over smooth stones. You bend down, cup your hands, and drink. The water is cold, pure. Without anything added, it refreshes not only your body, but your mind. There is nothing to figure out here, nothing to fix, only flow, only stillness, only the sense that in this bare, uncluttered moment, You are free. The mind softens when there is nothing more to grasp. And from the stillness, wisdom rises like mist from the surface of the stream, gentle and true. Simplicity in modern life doesn't have to mean living in the woods or throwing away everything you own. It begins with small, intentional choices, choosing to keep your mornings quiet, to turn off your phone during meals, to own fewer things but love them more deeply. It's saying no when your heart is tired, letting your calendar breathe, leaving a few hours unplanned on purpose. It's giving yourself permission to enjoy the quiet joy of a home-cooked meal, a walk without your headphones, an evening without checking email. You might keep a drawer empty, light one candle instead of many, repeat one mantra instead of chasing new affirmations every week. Simplicity is not about lack, but clarity. It's about making space for what nourishes you, what calms your nervous system, what brings you home to yourself. In a world that teaches more, faster, bigger, simplicity is a quiet rebellion, one that leads not to less life, but to a more meaningful one, where presence returns and peace can enter. Samuel sat alone in his father's study, the room dimly lit by a single desk lamp, casting long shadows on the shelves filled with dusty books and half-forgotten mementos. The kind of room that held 1,000 silent conversations from the past. The air smelled faintly of old paper and something else, something like absence, like the breath of someone who used to be there but wasn't anymore. The funeral had ended hours ago. The guests had left with gentle hugs and murmured condolences, and now only silence remained, thick and pressing, wrapping around him like a second skin. He reached for the box of photographs that someone had left on the side table, fingers brushing against yellowed edges, hoping, searching. He didn't even know what for. Maybe a memory, maybe forgiveness. He flipped through the images. One by one, portraits of strangers, streets in Morocco, children playing in Burma, a woman smiling behind a veil of rain in Tokyo, moments captured in perfect light, compositions that had won awards and hung in galleries. And yet, as he turned page after page, a hollow began to bloom in his chest, wide and slow and unbearable. His fingers stopped at an old family photo from years ago. His father holding a fishing rod, younger, stronger, laughing, while Samuel stood in the background behind the lens, always behind the lens. He looked through the entire box, faster now, more desperate, until it hit him like a quiet truth. There wasn't a single photo of the two of them together. Not one in the last 10 years. Not a birthday. Not a Sunday morning. Not a quiet afternoon. He had captured sunsets in Iceland, war-torn cities in black and white, lovers in alleyways across Paris. But he hadn't captured his own father's smile. Not once. And the weight of that truth sank into him like stones into a lake, each one marking a moment he'd missed, a conversation he hadn't had, a presence he had taken for granted. All those years, he had been framing the world, hunting for beauty, chasing emotion through his lens, thinking he was preserving life. But now, all he saw was how much he had let pass him by. He had always been the observer, never the participant. His hand steady, his eye trained, his heart held at a safe distance. And now the safety felt like a curse. He had been to the Amazon, to the Arctic, to slums and palaces, had spoken to monks and millionaires. But he hadn't really been here. Not really. Not in the room. Not in his own life. The ache in his chest grew sharper. Not loud. Just deep. Like a whisper that had waited too long to be heard. He closed the box of photographs and leaned back in the old leather chair. The silence of the room now echoing the silence inside him. Outside, the world moved on. Cars passing by. A dog barking in the distance. A street lamp flickering like a heartbeat on the edge of the window frame. But Samuel didn't move. He just sat there, breathing, remembering, regretting. Not because he hadn't loved his father, but because he had loved him in the margins, in the unspoken ways, in the way people love when they're too busy documenting life to actually live it. And now, it was too late to say anything. Too late to ask about stories, to laugh at old jokes, to take just one photo, not for a gallery, not for the world, just for himself. And the emptiness of that realization filled the room like a fog, blurring the edges of everything. He felt like a ghost in his own memories, like a man who had traveled the world only to come home and find nothing but frames with no faces that truly mattered. The park was quiet that afternoon. The kind of quiet that feels earned after a long stretch of noise. Samuel wandered without a destination, camera in hand, instinctively searching for light, for lines, for something worth capturing. But everything looked tired, as if the world itself had taken a breath too long. He stood beneath a tree whose leaves had begun to curl into the golds and crimsons of early fall. But even that scene, though picturesque, did not move him. The lens felt heavier than usual, his arms more reluctant to raise it. It wasn't the subject that lacked life, it was him. He sat on a bench, aimless, his eyes following a bird hopping near a stone path. Then glanced up and noticed an old man a few steps away, seated cross-legged on the grass, not doing anything in particular. No camera, no phone, no notebook. He wasn't meditating in any formal way, wasn't humming or posturing or trying to look wise. He was just there, breathing, gazing at the sky like it was a nut. Samuel watched for a while, then approached, partly curious, partly skeptical. "You're not going to photograph this light?" he asked, gesturing to the golden sky breaking through the trees. The man turned slightly, smiled with a kind softness, and said, "I don't need to capture it. I'm already here." That answer sat with Samuel like an echo, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Already here. He blinked, not sure what to say next. And so he sat too, not out of politeness, but because something inside him had quietly asked him to. The man said nothing else, just returned his gaze to the open sky, as if the shifting clouds were telling him something worth hearing. Samuel glanced around, the children playing, the wind brushing the grass, a dog chasing leaves, all of it unfolding without anyone recording or documenting it. And for the first time in a long time, he lowered his camera, placed it on the bench, and simply looked. Not to frame, not to edit, not to remember, just to see. And in that stillness, he realized how much he had missed. Not missed as in failed to attend, but missed as in overlooked while looking too hard. He had stood atop mountains, walked through desert ruins, sailed along remote rivers, yet somehow he had never truly arrived. Always an observer, never quite a participant. His life had been a gallery of beauty, but it was curated, distant, always behind glass. He remembered a time in Tokyo, watching cherry blossoms fall at midnight, and rather than breathe them in, he had changed his lens to a wider one. And the time in Morocco, when a child had offered him a fig, warm from the sun, and he had refused because both hands were holding equipment. So many moments he had preserved, but never actually lived. Now, sitting next to a man who needed no proof of presence, he felt something unravel inside him. Gently, but unmistakably. When you are truly present, nothing is missing. The thought came to him not as a conclusion, but as a quiet truth. He didn't ask the man's name, didn't take a photo, didn't reach for anything. He just sat. As the sun lowered and the shadows grew long, and for the first time in years, he felt still, not numb, not distracted, just still. And somehow, that stillness felt like coming home. He sat down on the same bench the old man once occupied, the one facing the little pond where ducks drifted aimlessly and children threw crumbs with squeals of delight. And for the first time in years, Samuel placed his camera beside him instead of in his hands. It felt strange at first, like letting go of a shield, or a second skin that had always been between him and the world. But then he noticed the soft breeze brushing against his cheek like a silent greeting, and the way the sunlight filtered through the rustling leaves above, casting shifting patterns of gold and green across the path before him. He heard laughter, high and sudden, a burst from a child chasing bubbles that shimmered and popped midair. He watched a couple pass by, their hands brushing, not quite holding, yet tender in their rhythm. A dog barked somewhere behind him, and birds responded in fluttered melodies. And he just sat there, not trying to catch it, not framing the moment, just letting it be. And in that letting, something inside him loosened, uncoiled, like a breath he didn't know he'd been holding for decades. He thought about all the images he had captured: sunrises over Icelandic glaciers, temples wrapped in morning fog, the chaotic beauty of Indian markets, the lonely elegance of Alaskan wolves, and how they were all perfectly composed, perfectly exposed, yet somehow incomplete. Because while his eyes had been open, his heart had been closed, always seeking the next perfect shot, never staying long enough to feel the moment beneath it. And now, without any lens between him and life, he felt the rawness of it all, the immediacy, the grace in imperfection, the quiet joy of simply being, not recording, not curating, just being. And the memory of his father floated back, soft and undeniable, like a whisper through the trees. Not as a photograph, but as a feeling. The way his father's voice used to hum while brewing coffee. The rough warmth of his hands adjusting a bike seat. The silent support in his gaze during Samuel's first gallery opening. And he realized these were the moments he had no record of. No prints, no files. Yet they were the ones that hurt to have missed. They were what mattered. And now, sitting under the sky his father once walked beneath, he felt tears quietly find their way down his cheeks, not from sorrow alone, but from a strange, grateful ache, the kind that comes when something lost begins to return, when the heart, after wandering, begins to come home. He thought of the old man's words. I don't need to capture it. I'm already here. And now they made sense. Not in the mind, but in the marrow, in the silence between breaths, where presence lives, where life truly happens. And as he looked up at the slow dance of clouds, he whispered softly to himself, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. And it felt true, deeply, tenderly true. He sat there until the light faded, until the sounds of the park mellowed into quiet hums and distant footsteps, until the world grew dim, but somehow fuller. And when he rose to leave, he didn't take a single photograph. But for the first time in a long time, he felt as though he had truly seen. Now close your eyes and take a gentle breath in. Let it flow out slowly. Again, in and out. There's no need to rush. No need to go anywhere. For now, you are simply here. Imagine yourself standing barefoot on soft grass. It's early morning, and the dew still clings to each blade like tiny stars resting before they disappear into sunlight. Your feet touch the earth. Cool, damp, alive. And you feel it. You feel the world, not through a lens, not through thoughts, but through your skin, your breath, your presence. You don't need to capture anything, nothing to prove, nothing to remember, just this feeling, just this moment. The air is gentle, wrapping around your arms like a shawl of silence. Birds are singing somewhere above you, not performing, not posing, just singing because they are alive. And you are listening because you are present. Feel the sensation in your souls, the tiny shifts, the quiet pulse of the land beneath you, how it holds you without asking anything in return, how it has always been here, waiting for you to notice. Now take a slow step forward, not to get anywhere, just to feel. Your foot lifts, moves, and lands softly on the earth, as if kissing it. Again. Another step. Feel the balance, the weight, the grace in every motion. No audience, no camera, just you and the miracle of walking on this earth. A breeze brushes your face, not cold, not warm, just real. It passes by, and in its passing, you become aware of your own stillness, the way your body breathes without effort, the rise and fall of your chest, the tiny pause between inhale and exhale where peace quietly lives. There is nothing missing. Even if your mind wanders, even if memories come and go, gently guide yourself back to your feet on the grass, to your breath, to the sound of life all around you. And inside you, you don't have to name anything. You don't have to understand. Just notice. Just be here now. Perhaps nearby, children are laughing. Leaves are fluttering. The clouds shift without asking for attention. Everything continues, and so do you. Breathing, feeling, alive. No need to frame this moment. No need to write it down. You are not a witness anymore. You are part of it. This is not something you'll remember later. This is something you are living now. Shay, let your shoulders drop. Your hands soften. Your jaw relax. and just rest in this simple knowing that you are here, and that is enough. Take one more breath, slow and kind. And as you breathe out, allow a small smile to form, not on your lips, but somewhere inside, in the quiet place that recognizes peace. And when you are ready, only when you are ready, gently bring yourself back, carrying with you not a picture, but a feeling, not a story, but a truth. You were here. Here. You are here. And nothing was missing. Samuel still takes photographs. The camera still rests gently in his hands on quiet afternoons. And the world still unfolds in colors and shadows before his eyes. But something has shifted. He no longer rushes to capture everything. No longer feels the ache of needing to preserve each moment before it slips away. Some days, he doesn't even lift the lens. Some days, he simply sits. He sits on the porch with his wife, her hand resting in his, their children laughing in the garden nearby. The sun drapes itself across the wooden steps. There's no camera, no screen, no attempt to hold anything still, only breath. Only the sound of his daughter's voice calling out for him to watch her spin barefoot in the grass. And he watches, not through glass, not through a frame, just with his whole being. He doesn't tell himself to remember it. He doesn't reach for the shutter. He just smiles. There is a quiet freedom in letting go of the need to prove that you were there. A soft power in simply being there. With each small act of presence, sharing a meal, hearing a story, walking without headphones, saying, I see you with nothing more than a glance. Samuel has begun to live the life he once only tried to capture. He still photographs weddings, still edits and curates, still sends clients the albums they'll treasure. But even in those moments, there's a tenderness that wasn't there before. A slower breath, a deeper stillness between shots. He no longer fears missing the perfect frame, because now he knows. The perfect frame was never the point. Can you let go of trying to capture life and just live it? This is the question Samuel now lives with. And maybe, if you're quiet enough, you can feel it too. In the spaces between your tasks, in the gentle weight of your body, resting where you are right now. Maybe you've spent so much time trying to preserve, to collect, to hold on, that you forgot what it feels like to simply be here. What would it be like to sit with your loved ones and not reach for your phone? To watch the rain without taking a picture of it? To feel your own breath, steady and warm, and trust that this, too, is enough. Samuel found his way back to presence by losing what he thought he needed. And in that emptiness, he discovered a fullness no photograph could hold. So perhaps this is the beginning of a different kind of story. One where you stop trying to freeze every moment. One where you step out from behind the lens and into the life that's unfolding all around you. Not captured, not posted, just lived. And in that quiet living, something beautiful begins. So often, the mind is not where the body is. We sit with someone, but drift into unfinished thoughts, replaying a mistake from last week or worrying about next month. We eat but do not taste, listen but do not hear, move through a day without truly being in it. This restless chasing between past and future leaves us tired, anxious, unfulfilled. And yet, the present moment is always here, quietly waiting, steady and still, like the ground beneath our feet. In Zen, we are reminded that peace is not in controlling tomorrow or fixing yesterday, but in arriving fully into what is here now. When we learn to be present, even for a few slow breaths, we begin to feel alive again, like a returning, like coming home. Imagine a leaf drifting from a high branch, weightless, with no urgency, just responding to the wind. No thought of where it came from, no idea where it will land. Only the gentle fall, this moment, this movement, this air. You are that leaf right now. And that is enough. In everyday life, presence can be found in the simplest moments. When eating dinner, place your phone away and just chew, just taste. When a child speaks to you, look into their eyes as if nothing else matters. When walking, try not to rush. Instead, feel the ground. Hear the breeze. Notice one flower blooming by the sidewalk. Presence is not something to achieve, but something to return to. Again and again. It is always here, beneath the noise, beneath the rush, waiting, silently inviting you in. We often live in two places at once, but never truly in either. The past pulls us back with guilt or longing. The future pulls us forward with fear or hope. And we become split, scattered, thin. This is why we feel so tired, even when nothing much is happening. Zen teaches that presence is the doorway to peace, because in the present, there is no battle to fight, no regret to fix, no future to conquer, only now, simple and alive. Being present does not mean ignoring the past or pretending the future doesn't exist. It means not letting them steal your breath away from this moment. Picture a soft bell in a temple garden. When it rings, it does not echo yesterday's sound or tomorrow's promise. It only chimes now. Its note vibrates into this 1 second of existence, clear and true. That is the power of presence. You are like the bell, capable of ringing awake into this moment. Start small. When washing dishes, just feel the water. When driving, turn off the noise and just be with the road. When someone hugs you, pause, breathe, feel the warmth. You don't need a perfect life to be present, only a willingness to return over and over, as gently as a breath. So many of us are chasing something we cannot name: a better day, a different life, a version of ourselves we think will finally bring peace. In that chase, we miss the tiny sacredness of this moment, of this breath, of this very heartbeat. The Buddha taught that the only real path to liberation is here and now, not later, not elsewhere, not after we've fixed everything. Presence is where life touches us, raw and honest. A Zen image speaks of the sound of a single bamboo stalk cracking in the cold night. It happens only once, never to return. And it is perfect in its loneliness, its simplicity. That sound is not yesterday or tomorrow. It is now. And so is your life. This hour, this sky, this silence, this skin. Try not to wait for big changes. Start in your everyday. When folding laundry, feel the cloth, smell the fabric. Give thanks. When brushing your teeth, notice the cold of the water, the weight of your feet. Presence doesn't require time. It only asks for attention. And in that attention, you may find something beautiful. Your life, as it is, imperfect, and enough. Ugh. We live among distractions, each one pulling us away from ourselves. The phone, the news, the endless lists. Even love can become rushed when we are not truly there. We say, "I'm listening," but think of work. We eat but scroll. We lie in bed, body still, but mind racing into what ifs. Slowly. This becomes a habit of absence, and absence leaves the heart lonely. Zen presence is not dramatic, not a sudden enlightenment. It is a gentle practice of softening back into now. A single breath, a soft glance, a hand resting on your own chest. Imagine a quiet room at dusk, a small candle burning, a cup of warm tea held between your palms. Outside, nothing is finished, nothing is solved. But in this room, for these few minutes, you are here, whole, untouched by the noise of the world. You can create this space anywhere. During dinner, sit down and eat slowly, even if it's just a sandwich. When walking your dog, leave your headphones behind and listen to the rustle of leaves. Presence doesn't require silence or mountains. It needs only your willingness to be here, truly here. And when you are, even the smallest moment becomes a blessing. Janelle sat at the edge of her bed, still wearing her work uniform from the grocery store, her shoulders heavy with the weight of another long shift behind the register, the scent of plastic bags and overripe fruit clinging faintly to her sleeves. The apartment was quiet now, her daughter asleep in the next room, a soft hum of the old refrigerator filling the silence like a tired breath. She reached for her phone without thinking, a habit more than a choice. And as the screen lit up, so did the ache in her chest. Photos of vacations in Italy, promotions, new homes with white kitchens and golden light, smiling faces, perfect children. Captions like grateful beyond words and hard work pays off. It felt like everyone she had grown up with had arrived somewhere while she was still stuck in the same place. Clocking in at minimum wage, counting quarters at the laundromat, hoping the car wouldn't break down this month. Sometimes she told herself they were just highlights, just filters and good angles. But the doubt would always return. What if she was simply behind? What if she had made too many wrong turns? What if this was it? She put the phone down and stared at the ceiling, feeling the quietness become something heavier, something almost accusing. The bills on the counter hadn't moved. The rent was still due next week. The credit card was maxed from school supplies and emergency dental work. Her daughter had outgrown her shoes again, and Janelle had told her gently, "Let's wait until next paycheck." Honey, she hated saying no, hated the way her child looked down and said, "It's okay, Mama," like she had already learned to expect less. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the slow erosion of confidence. The voice in her head whispering that she wasn't doing enough, wasn't being enough, that she was failing in a quiet, invisible way that no one would ever really see, but she would always feel. She thought of her daughter's teacher, always so poised, always smiling, probably drinking fancy coffee from reusable mugs with affirmations on them. And here she was, drinking instant coffee from a chipped cup, brushing crumbs off the couch before dinner. Every day felt like a small test she was barely passing: how to stretch spaghetti for 3 nights, how to fake energy when she wanted to collapse, how to show love when her heart was threadbare and tired. She didn't want luxury or fame or even approval. She just wanted to feel like she was okay, that this life, messy and incomplete as it was, still meant something. But some nights, like this one, the silence grew too loud. And in that silence, the comparisons crawled in. Unwelcome guests with sharp teeth. She remembered an old friend from high school, now a lawyer with a vacation home in Florida, who had recently posted, "Single mom life is tough, but grateful I've made it," and Janelle had stared at it too long, feeling something bitter rise in her throat. She wasn't jealous exactly, but something close, something like grief for a version of herself that had never arrived. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to keep the cold out. Though the cold wasn't on her skin, it was inside. The feeling that no matter how hard she tried, she was always one step behind, one bill late, one deep breath away from breaking. And yet, she couldn't stop because her daughter was watching. Because giving up was not an option. Because even in the quiet disappointment of these evenings, she still wanted to be the kind of mother who kept showing up. And so she sat there in the dim light, not crying, but close, surrounded by the invisible weight of should have been and not enough, wondering if maybe tomorrow she could feel just a little lighter, wondering if the world would ever feel less like a race she had already lost, wondering if this quiet, flawed, exhausted version of herself could ever be enough. That evening, the power went out without warning. One moment, the apartment was dim and quiet. The next, it was wrapped in complete darkness. The soft hum of electricity vanishing like a breath held too long. Janelle stood frozen in the hallway for a second, heart thudding, then sighed and reached instinctively for her phone, using its flashlight to guide her toward the kitchen. Her daughter called out from the bedroom, her voice small and uncertain. And Janelle answered gently, "It's okay, baby, just the power. We'll light a candle." She found the half-burned one from last Christmas in the drawer under the sink, the one that smelled faintly of cinnamon, and placed it in an old ceramic bowl on the table. The flame flickered to life, casting soft shadows across the walls, bathing the room in a kind of golden hush. They didn't have much left for dinner. Just a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, a few slices of apple that had started to brown. But Janelle laid everything out like it was a feast. She tore the bread in half with her hands, handed a piece to her daughter, and sat down across from her at the tiny kitchen table, its surface chipped and worn smooth at the edges. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, just chewed quietly. The only sounds were the soft crunch of apples and the occasional pop of the candle wick. Outside, the city was a shadow of itself. Streetlights dark, traffic slowed, neighbors moving around with flashlights like fireflies blinking through the night. And inside their little apartment, everything felt slower, softer, strangely peaceful. The absence of noise made room for something else, something harder to name. Janelle glanced at her daughter, who was grinning around a mouthful of bread, swinging her legs under the table like she had not a care in the world. It made Janelle smile despite herself. That small joy, that simple, glowing moment. "Are you okay, sweetie?" she asked, brushing a crumb off the table. The little girl nodded enthusiastically, then said with a kind of quiet wonder, "I like tonight. It feels like a camping trip." I think this is my favorite night ever." Janelle blinked, caught off guard by the softness in her chest, the way those words landed. Favorite night ever. Here, in this dim room with no lights, no TV, no fancy dinner. Just a candle and a loaf of bread and two tired hearts sitting across from each other. She looked around, really looked at the peeling edge of the wallpaper, the dishes drying in the sink, the mismatched chairs, the hand-drawn picture on the fridge that said "Best Mom Ever" in shaky crayon letters. And she felt something shift, like a knot inside her had been gently untied. It wasn't that the bills disappeared or the problems evaporated, but for that one moment, they didn't matter. She felt full, not from food, but from something else. The quiet closeness, the warmth of her daughter's joy, the flicker of light against her face. Maybe this was what mattered most. Not the comparisons or the perfection she could never reach. Maybe happiness wasn't somewhere out there, waiting in a better job, or a better apartment, or a better version of herself. Maybe it was already here, hidden inside these ordinary nights, waiting to be noticed. She took a deep breath, letting it settle low into her belly. And as she exhaled, the words passed through her mind like a breeze. A simple life is a happy life. Not spoken aloud, just felt. Her daughter leaned over the table and whispered, "Can we do this again tomorrow?" "Mama!" With candles and no phones. Janelle smiled, eyes a little misty, and nodded. "Yeah, baby, we can do that." And in the soft golden glow of the candlelight, something long buried began to return. Not a grand epiphany, not a dramatic change, but a quiet kind of knowing that maybe she wasn't as far from peace as she thought. That maybe, just maybe, she had already arrived. The candlelight danced gently on the walls, casting golden waves across the chipped cupboards and the tiled floor. And Janelle sat there, still and quiet, watching her daughter giggle softly as she stacked apple slices into a tiny tower on her plate. Something about that moment held her in place, like time had paused just long enough to let her breathe. Not the shallow, anxious kind of breath she was used to taking, but something deeper, something that reached the soft places in her chest she hadn't touched in a long time. Her hands rested on the table, empty but calm. And for once, she didn't feel like she had to reach for anything. Her daughter's laughter bubbled up again, echoing in the small apartment like music, pure and whole. And Janelle felt it in her bones, the sound of joy, untouched by expectations, unfiltered by worry. She looked at the little girl's face, glowing in the candlelight, crumbs on her chin, eyes sparkling, and wondered how someone so small could carry so much light. And suddenly, She realized this was it. This quiet, ordinary evening. This makeshift dinner with no electricity and no distractions. This moment she didn't plan or polish or post. It was enough, more than enough. It was full. She wasn't lacking. She wasn't behind. She wasn't broken. She was here, alive, loved, and surrounded by something she hadn't felt in so long that she had almost forgotten its name. Contentment. The word landed gently in her chest like a bird returning home. Not happiness. Not success. Not perfection, but a kind of soft, inner stillness that didn't need anything else to exist. She thought of all the times she had scrolled through her phone, searching for something to make her feel whole. All the comparisons she had let carve lines into her heart. And she saw now how far they had taken her from herself. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The words came to her like a whisper from some place she hadn't visited in years. A phrase she had once read in a dusty old book left behind by her grandmother. She never understood it back then. But tonight, it felt like the truth. Like something she had always known, but had buried beneath years of survival and striving. She looked around the room. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. The silence no longer felt heavy. The dark no longer felt threatening. It was soft now, like a blanket wrapped around them both. A kind of sacred stillness she didn't want to disturb. She could hear her own breath, slow and steady, and it didn't feel like something to escape from. It felt like home. Her daughter leaned back in the chair, hands behind her head like a tiny philosopher, and said dreamily, "It feels like the world is sleeping. Mama, like it's just us and the candle." And Janelle smiled, because that's exactly how it felt. Just them, floating in this little bubble of light and quiet and breadcrumbs. She didn't need to fix anything right now. The unpaid bills could wait. The noise of the world could stay outside. For the first time in years, she wasn't at war with her life. She wasn't fighting the moment. She was in it, completely. And in that stillness, something inside her began to heal. Not in a dramatic, storybook kind of way, but gently, like a cracked window, letting in fresh air after years of dust. She remembered how often she had told herself she wasn't enough, that she had to do more. Be more, give more. And now, with nothing extra to give, she felt more present, more connected, more alive than ever. She reached across the table, took her daughter's small hand in hers, and just held it there, warm and steady. The little girl didn't say anything, just smiled and squeezed back. Outside, the city slowly began to stir again. The faint buzz of electricity returning to the streets. a few lights flickering back to life in nearby buildings. But Janelle didn't move to turn anything on. She let the candle burn a little longer. Let the shadows dance a little more. Let this simple moment stretch itself out just a bit further. Because somewhere deep in her chest, where worry used to live, something else was beginning to grow. Oh, not certainty, not security, but a quiet, rooted kind of peace. The kind that didn't ask for more, didn't need approval, didn't chase after what was already here. And as the flame flickered low, she closed her eyes and let herself rest inside that feeling, knowing now, in a way she couldn't unknow, that contentment wasn't something she had to earn. It was something she could choose. Right here, in the soft hush of a candlelit kitchen, in the presence of love, in the heart of an ordinary night. Now close your eyes and take a slow, soft breath in. And as you exhale, feel the weight of the day begin to melt away. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let your thoughts quiet like leaves settling to the earth. Imagine you are sitting in a small room, quiet and still. The lights have gone out, but there is no fear, only calm. In front of you is a single candle, its golden flame flickering gently, casting a warm glow across the space. There is nothing else to distract you here. No screens, no noise, just the hum of silence and the softness of presence. Beside you, on the table, is a simple plate, a piece of bread, an apple slice, maybe a cup of warm tea. Nothing fancy, nothing dressed up, just enough. And in this moment, it is all you need. Across from you, a child is laughing, pure, light, free. The kind of laughter that rises from somewhere deeper than the world's noise. It fills the room like music, and you feel it ripple through you gently, as if the laughter itself is brushing the dust from your heart. Now place your hand softly over your chest. Feel the quiet rhythm beneath your palm, the steady beat of life that asks nothing of you. That simply is. Breathe into that space. Slow, deep. And as you exhale, imagine the glow of the candle resting in your chest. A soft, golden light growing inside you. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is enough. Let yourself sit with this feeling, the simplicity of it, the peace in not reaching, not rushing, not needing more. This is a moment outside of time. Just you. The candlelight. The warmth of bread shared with love. The sound of laughter reminding you of what really matters. With each breath, allow the clutter in your mind to fall away. The comparisons, the doubts, the endless list of things left undone. Let them dissolve into the darkness beyond the candle's glow. Not forever, just for now, because this moment is yours. This quiet, glowing moment where you remember what it feels like to be still, to be whole, to be full, without having to be more. Feel the air around you, soft and gentle, wrapping around your body like a blanket. Nothing is missing. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are here, and here is enough. Stay in this space for as long as you like, breathing, resting, listening to the soft echo of peace rising from within. No effort, no struggle, only being, only breath. And when you're ready, you can slowly bring your awareness back, gently, without hurry. Carry the candle's light with you, not in your hands, but in your heart, knowing that even in the darkest rooms, even in the simplest nights, there is a kind of beauty that does not depend on anything outside of you. Peace is already here, and it begins within you. Morning light now slips quietly through the same window, landing gently on the same cracked tiles and hand-me-down table. But something has shifted inside Janelle. She still wakes early, still ties her apron, still greets customers with a tired but honest smile. The apartment hasn't grown larger. The bills haven't disappeared. And the paycheck still arrives with limits. But the weight on her chest, that quiet ache of not being enough, no longer lives so loudly inside her. She has stopped measuring her worth by what she lacks, stopped looking out the window of her life, wishing for someone else's view. Instead, she started noticing the little things that had always been there. Her daughter's drawings, taped crookedly on the wall. The way the afternoon sun warms the living room rug. The sound of laughter during dishes. The smell of bread toasting while the world outside rushes by. There is no grand success story to tell. No miracle windfall or promotion. No sudden transformation into someone glossier or more impressive. And yet, everything has changed. Because now, when Janelle sits down at the end of a long day, she no longer asks if she is falling behind. She no longer compares her quiet life to the filtered snapshots of others. She looks at her daughter, brushing her teeth in mismatched pajamas, and feels a fullness that words cannot hold. Love, presence, breath. She still scrolls through her phone sometimes, still sees the trips and celebrations and curated perfection. But now, there's space between what she sees and what she feels. She can smile at it, admire it, without letting it shrink her own joy. She knows now that her life may not be polished, but it is real. And in that realness, there is beauty. Some nights, they still light a candle just because, not because the power is out, but because the soft glow reminds them of that night, that small, sacred moment when everything unnecessary fell away and they found themselves sitting in the center of enough. They eat simple dinners, play card games at the kitchen table, share stories with the lights dimmed low. And often, her daughter will lean over and say, "This feels like that night, Mama." And Janelle will smile. Not the smile of someone trying to prove she's okay, but the smile of someone who knows she already is. She doesn't need to become someone else, doesn't need to be richer, louder, more admired, or more put together. The voice inside her, the one that used to whisper, "You're not doing enough," has grown quieter, replaced by something softer, a knowing, a peace. And sometimes, as she walks home from work with tired feet and a bag of groceries, she catches herself humming, not because life is easy, but because life is enough. So maybe the question is not what's missing, or what needs fixing, or how to reach some distant version of success. Maybe the real question is simpler, quieter, more honest. Can you see how much you already have? There is a quiet hunger that follows many of us through life. Not for food, not for shelter, not even for love exactly, but for something we can't quite name. We reach one goal, and already the next one is waiting. We buy the thing we thought would make us feel whole, and yet, a week later, the emptiness returns. Even when life is good, something inside whispers, "It's not enough. You're not enough." There's always someone with more, always something you haven't done, somewhere you haven't arrived. And so, we scroll, we shop, we compare, we measure. And with every step forward, the bar quietly moves further away. Contentment begins to feel like laziness, like settling, like we're giving up. But the truth is, this chasing wears us down. We forget how to enjoy the moment because we're already reaching for the next. And in the dark, alone, the question rises, will it ever be enough? Will I? This feeling of lack, of never arriving, is not a flaw in us. It's a symptom of a world that teaches us to always want more, to always be more. And yet, somewhere beneath all that noise, there is a still voice, a quieter truth that maybe what you have right now is already enough. And maybe so are you. Contentment is not the same as giving up, and it is not the same as having everything you want. It is the quiet realization that you already have so much. That peace is not waiting on the next promotion or the next version of you, but is hidden in the soft folds of this very moment. To feel content is not to stop growing, but to stop believing that your worth depends on your growth. It is the freedom of stepping off the endless wheel of comparison, of arriving fully in the now without needing to prove or improve anything. When we are content, we do not shrink. We simply stop struggling. We no longer chase every whisper of desire, but listen instead to what truly matters. Contentment is not complacency. It is clarity. It's looking around your life and saying this, too, is enough. Even when imperfect, even when quiet, even when no one else sees it. True happiness does not come from more, but from presence, from seeing what is, and choosing to be with it kindly. This kind of happiness does not burn out. It deepens, and it brings a kind of joy that doesn't need applause, doesn't need to be seen, because it is rooted, calm, full, and free. Picture a simple bowl resting on a stone table at night. Inside the bowl is clear water, still and unshaken. Above it, the full moon shines, and there, held in the water, is the moon's reflection, glowing, whole, not because the bowl tried to catch it, not because it was large or decorated, but because it was quiet, still, enough. Or picture a man sitting alone in a kitchen, his hands around a warm piece of bread, the crust golden, the inside soft. He eats slowly, in silence, not rushing, not distracted. And with each bite, his face softens. The hunger in his belly fades, but something deeper fades too. The hunger to be somewhere else, to be someone else, to have more than this. He is not poor, not rich, not concerned with either. He is simply here, and in this quiet act, this undramatic moment, he is fed, not just in body, but in spirit. The simplicity holds him. The stillness nourishes him. And for once, he is not wanting, not reaching, just breathing and full. Contentment doesn't require a perfect life. It only asks us to notice the meal that nourished us today, even if it wasn't special. The old sweater that still keeps us warm after many winters. The quiet afternoon light that falls across the couch while we rest. Doing nothing. These are not big things, but they are enough things. To live with contentment is to pause and truly see what surrounds you. To wake up and say thank you. Even before the coffee. To feel gratitude not only when everything goes right, but especially when it doesn't. To accept that some days are messy, uncertain, incomplete, and still worthy of gentleness. You don't need more apps, more plans, more fixes. Sometimes you just need a deeper breath, a slower pace, a kind word to yourself to touch your heart and remind it this life, this moment, this body is already a gift. And when you begin to live from that knowing, the world softens, not because it changed, but because you did. And in that softness, you find peace. So much of life is spent trying to hold everything together. Success, relationships, identities, old dreams we no longer believe in. And yet, what if healing does not begin by gathering more, but by gently setting something down? Tonight, you've walked with Laura through the quiet grief of letting go, not with drama, but with the quiet ache of being honest with herself. You've watched Miguel return home, not to reclaim the past, but to remember what mattered most: warmth, care, the quiet joy of rice and beans cooked with love. And you've sat with Samuel, a man who spent his life chasing moments only to discover that peace was never in the perfect shot, but in presence itself. Each of their journeys began in unrest, loneliness, burnout, regret, and yet each of them came to a place of stillness, not because the world changed, but because they allowed themselves to change. They slowed down, they softened, they listened. And in doing so, they remembered something essentials. That joy is not out there in the next thing, but here, now. When we stop running, you don't need to start over tomorrow. You don't need to be more impressive, more productive, more anything. You can simply rest as you are. Happiness, in its truest form, is not loud. It does not shout from stages or pose for applause. It is quiet, steady, and deeply felt in moments of slowness. A bite of warm food, a soft breeze, the voice of someone you love. And yes, in the silence right now, as your breath slows and your body begins to soften into sleep. So let tonight be a quiet invitation to put down what no longer fits, to loosen the grip on who you thought you had to be, and to trust gently that what is meant for you will never need to be chased. There is no test here, no one to impress. You've done enough. You are enough. And the world, in all its complexity, becomes softer when you stop trying to hold it all alone. Take this peace into your sleep, not as a resolution to fix everything, but as a gentle knowing you are allowed to rest, to release, and to return to yourself. You are already home. Now, allow yourself to settle into your bed. Feel the surface beneath you, holding you without effort. Let your arms rest by your sides, your jaw soften, your belly loosen just a little. and take one slow, kind breath in and let it out with a soft sigh. Again, breathe in gently and breathe out slowly, as if every breath is a small wave washing you further into rest. Imagine you are standing beside a river at night. The sky above is deep and star-filled. The water moves slowly, reflecting soft light across its surface. You feel the earth under your feet, solid, grounding, quiet. In your hands, you hold a small leaf. It's not heavy, just something you've carried for a long time. Maybe a memory, maybe an old belief, maybe a pressure you no longer need. Now, take one more breath and gently place the leaf onto the water. Watch as it floats, spinning once, then moving downstream. No struggle, no force, just release. And as you watch it drift away, you notice you are still whole, still safe, still here. Let your shoulders sink a little deeper, your face soften, your thoughts slow like the current of the river. There's nothing to fix tonight, no decisions to make, no roles to play, only this soft permission to rest, to trust the moment, to be held by sleep itself.